Hi everyone, Fran here. Have you ever heard anyone say, my roof, my rules? Well, my guest on Hopenning this week is author Kelley Greville. Anne wrote the book called Roof Rules, and as she was a long-time chief financial officer in large organizations, she understood that there is a glass ceiling. And she also learned ways and strategies of circumventing that glass ceiling and getting around them. She shares some of these strategies on our interview this week, and there are many in her book. I hope you stay with me, and welcome to the Hopenning.
Welcome to the Hopenning. This is the place where hope is happening. And it's such a joy to have my guest, Kelley Greville, with me today. Anne is the author of the book Roof Rules: How Hidden Power Dynamics Shape Personal Development. Thank you, Anne, for joining us.
Well, thank you, Fran, for allowing me to come and join. And I just thank you for reaching out and for all the inspiration and the hope. We need people like you to spread that joy and the hope. So thank you for all that you do.
Oh, I appreciate your words. You know, hope comes in so many different ways and in different forms. And your book about the hidden powers within systems is very, very important. We're women and we see it all the time, but this happens also for men. So I think that our talk today it's poignant for so many reasons. And there is hope because as we say, there's a glass ceiling. We can't get past the glass ceiling for whatever reason. You know, our boss doesn't like us, or there's the club that we don't belong to the club. We just don't fit. Well, there's ways of getting around it. And what I love about your book is it's clear. It's clear about reasons why roof rules exist, and that even if they do exist, that there's ways around them. So, Anne, what are roof rules?
Well, roof rules are anything under a structure that doesn't belong to you. So think of them simply as when you approach a friend's house, do they take their shoes off before you enter their house? Or do they want you to put your purse in a certain area? Or maybe you have a friend that you go in and they want you to help yourself, and be very like family. They want you to get your own water and get your own ice cube out of the fridge, where some other people may want you to just, be very formal and allow them to guide you through their home. The same things happen every day when you walk into work. Is your work a very formal structure? Do they want you to wear, shirt and tie and speak in very formal ways? Or are they very relaxed and it's like, hey man, what's going on? How's your day? And you're coming in with your coffee and you're chit-chatting a little bit before you get to work. So under these roofs that we don't own, that are every roof, it's under a house, a church, a business, even under your own roof, you have rules. And how do you develop those rules so that other people thrive? And that's one of the things that I think that even business leaders are seeing in this book is, how do I create the environment that every single one of my employees, given their various personalities, because every one of us is unique, how do we all thrive with under that roof? And that's why it's so important that I have seen lately, everyone is struggling. And we're taking it personally. What's wrong with me? Why am I broken? Why can't I get that promotion? What is wrong? Do I need to work harder? What do I need to do to get that promotion? And the fact is, if we don't know what the rules are under that roof, we may not be able to facilitate the change that we're looking to make. And so that's why I wrote Roof Rules, is because there are so many people struggling, but they're struggling because they think it's them. And it's not. It's the rules that of the roof that they're under that they're not aware of, or they can't see, and therefore they can't make the adjustments necessary in order to thrive under that roof.
Well, you came to understand this at a very young age.
It did.
As a child. So, what happened? How did you, as a young child, begin to understand that the roof rules decide the rules?
Right. And thank you for bringing that up, because one of my most important heroes is my great grandmother. And at the time, I was living with my great grandmother and my mother, and my parents were divorced. And they were divorced, very early on, when divorce wasn't a thing. But I used to go over to my dad's house, and my dad had a background of a Marine. He was very simple. He would cook his meals in a pan and then pour half of it in a pot and hand me the pot, and we'd sit on the floor in front of a TV and we'd eat our dinner, right? But my mom's house was a lot more formal. And so we'd eat at the table with a napkin in our lap, and we'd eat at the table. And one night I was really, really tired, and I came home from swim practice, and my mom was out. So I scooped my meal, and I was like, oh, I'm just going to watch TV for a few minutes and relax before it's bedtime. Well, there was a rule in that house not to eat in the living room, and I got in trouble for it. And I didn't understand at that moment about rules, that at my dad's house, that was perfectly acceptable, but at my mom's house, it wasn't, until my great grandmother said, you see this roof? Your mama owns this roof, and therefore you have to follow your mama's rules. And when you go over to your dad's house, your dad has rules, and you have to follow his rules. And when you go to school tomorrow, your teacher has rules, and you have to follow her rules. And when your mama goes to work, she has to follow rules. And I was like, Mom, my mama has to follow rules at work? Wow. And so I started seeing these invisible structures everywhere, in churches and in every place that had a roof. And that allowed me to understand the dynamics that were happening around me, so that I could sort of weave my way in and find my path. And I think that awareness is what I'm trying to bring forward, because I constantly, in my career, as I mentored staff, I saw it in my staff all the time, that they were sabotaging their careers and had no clue that they were doing it. And it was based on rules of their growing up that were being pulled along into their behavior pattern that was in misalignment with the roof that they were working under.
So your childhood decides how you interact in the roof in your adulthood. Is that what you're saying?
Well, so let me give you two examples. I had one staff member that was brilliant. His ideas blew me away. He was a critical thinker. He was absolutely fantastic. But you get him in a meeting and he wouldn't say a word, nothing. He wouldn't bring up ideas. He wouldn't participate in brainstorming. And so my boss and my boss's boss said, this guy doesn't have any ideas to bring to the table. Why should we promote him? And so I brought him in and I said, can I ask you a question? It's sort of personal. And we discussed, I said, when you were growing up, were you part of a family structure that children were to be seen and not heard? His eyes got like saucers and he's like, how'd you know? And I was like, well, because that mind thought process is being brought into your workplace. That's why you're most likely not communicating in these meetings, and it's hurting you. It's hurting your career because they don't feel that you have any independent thought, but because I know you so well, I know that you do. And if you want to get to where you want to go in your career, you're going to have to choose what to bring up in these meetings. I know it's really uncomfortable for you, but you're going to have to be able to express your ideas in these meetings, because that former roof rule is not helping you under this roof. You're not in alignment. So that's one example. The next example was I had a staff member. Oh my gosh, she was my workhorse. She would work and work and work and work and work and work and work. And no matter what I gave her or what everybody else gave her, she would find a way to do it. And she was heading towards burnout very quickly. So I brought her into my office and I said to her, I said, may I ask you this personal question? I said, are you the firstborn in your family? Are you the oldest? And she's like, how do you know that? And I said, were you given a lot of responsibility being the oldest child? And she goes, yeah, I was. And I said, okay, that makes sense to me, because in your career, you are accountable and you are responsible and you don't now know how to delegate. I cannot move you into a leadership role that is influencing. You have to influence versus do the work. If you don't demonstrate that influencing skill set by getting stuff off your plate, you have people within this unit that you can delegate to, but you're not. You're doing all the work yourself. And when you do that, you're not demonstrating that you can lead through influence. And that's what you need. That's the skill set you need in order for me to promote you. So I understand that accountability and that responsibility, and you want to see that perfectionism, you want to see it all done right. But if you don't let it go, I can't move you up into the role that I want to see you thrive in, because I believe that you can absolutely be in that leadership role, but you're not letting go of what you have in order to make room for something new.
So somehow along the line, you moved from a child who was of a split home, right? You moved between two homes, into a position of power where you were actually organizing people and helping people to get where they needed to go within the organizations. So you had people underneath you and you could see their skill sets and understand them. But if I were to back up, there's a time in your life when you were just an ordinary high school kid. You were in high school, you were I'm not sure what city you were in. You're in Tucson, Arizona
I was in
now.
Colorado at the time, yeah.
You were in Colorado. So if I were to ask your closest high school friends or the teachers what you were like in high school, how would they have described you, Anne?
Well, I think that's a really interesting question, because I learned very early that I didn't want to go, like, we lost our home during that split. It was a very challenging time for our family. And so I learned from my great grandmother, she's like, if you want to make something of yourself, you need to set your goals very high and you need to be focused. You need to focus on what is important to you, and all that other stuff is noise. So I was an elite athlete at the time in high school. I couldn't go to parties. I had signed an elite agreement that I wouldn't party, I wouldn't do drugs, I wouldn't drink, I wouldn't go skiing, because you can't break something and be with your team. There were quite a few rules that we had. My coach set them out very clearly. Don't break them, be on time, all of those skill sets. So when I was in high school, I was very much on the fringe, if you will, but I still had like choir. I was with choir. I had art. I had a love of art. So I was helping my student council make posters. So I was involved, but I wasn't ever feeling like a part of, which I think is really, really strange as a high schooler, because you never know until you go back to your reunions. And we had a huge class, and I pretty much knew a lot of people because I was an athlete, I was in choir, I was in art, I was working with the student council, I worked with the news. I mean, I was doing the things that I loved on the periphery while I was still an athlete outside of high school. So as an elite, I was pulled out of high school. So I felt that I wasn't in the in cloud because I wasn't going to the parties. I never went to a high school dance. I never could, because we always had meets right when the high school dances happened. So I never was able to go and participate. And so it was sort of a groundbreaking thing for me, is to say, I'm going to focus on what I need to do in order to be successful. And I did that at a very, very young age. So I think that has propelled me into being the only woman in a boardroom, and taking leadership roles, because all that other stuff, to me, all that emotional stuff was noise. And it was like, I need to get here, so I need to figure out how to get from here to here. And that's the same. Those are the lessons that I learned as an athlete. Those are the lessons that I learned as, a child on my own. After 18, I moved into the world, and I made space for myself. So I think that was really important. Those were really important lessons for me. And I probably was not the typical high school student, because I was very driven. Even if I got an A on my paper, I'd take it to my English teacher and go, well, you didn't give me any comments. How could this be improved? And she's like, I gave you an A. And I'm like, so how can it be better? So I think I was always one of those people that was looking for a way up, because I knew college was going to be even harder and I needed to prepare for it. So I've always been the Girl Scout. I've always been prepared. I've always been trying to figure out, if I want this promotion, how am I going to prepare myself for that promotion? How am I going to be that first person in the door when that promotion job opens up? And I think that's a different philosophy than a lot of people.
So as you talk, I can hear you say that you were independent, focused, probably strong-willed,
Stubborn.
stubborn.
Some people would call that stubborn.
All of these qualities that, that made you extremely successful. But in the book, it talks about a time when you had come into an organization and there were unspoken rules with unspoken consequences, right?
Yes.
Into an organization. You were young, you were an upstart, you were driven, you were dynamic, and it didn't work. So
Correct.
let's talk about that, because I think that happens as well. You had all the qualities that should have made people listen, but it
They
didn't.
should have, and it didn't.
Right.
It
What
did
happened?
not happen. So I was hired as a CFO very early on in my career. I mean, I was one of the youngest CFOs that I know, but I was extremely well qualified. I had all the qualifications. I had my CPA. I had an IT background. I had worked in the industry, so I was very well positioned. The only thing that I was walking into an insurance agency. So I didn't have as much of an insurance background. Then I immediately went and got my broker's license after this conversation happened. But the challenge with it is that I was in a board meeting and I presented a problem and I presented a solution without grounding that idea with the stakeholders first. And because I didn't ground it, it was the CEO at the time. and I didn't ground it with him first before bringing my ideas to the board and presenting what I saw as a challenge and a problem that needed solving immediately, my voice was completely dismissed. It was dismissed out of fact. And I had to take a couple steps back because I knew that this company was in trouble. And I needed to find a way to admit my mistake. I needed to find a way to network with my peers in order to find my way back into the good grace of the CEO so that we together could solve that problem. But I was devastated. But had I wallowed in that devastation rather than going, okay, you've got 15 minutes to wallow and you've got, 15 minutes to come up with a solution, I had to recover fast. And so understanding that, oh, what happened here? Oh, I stepped on the CEO's toes. Oh, I need to backtrack here. Oh, I need help and support. Yeah. So I think that analyzing what went wrong and not personalizing it, because I took it personal for a good 15 minutes. Man, was I mad. My red hair, you don't know this, I'm gray now, but my red hair was flaming. I mean, steam was coming out my ears. And I was like, this isn't going to solve anything. It's not going to solve, it's not going to move you forward. And so again, it was that way of dissecting, of saying what matters and what doesn't matter. It's like my pride at that time didn't matter. So I'm going to put my pride on the shelf for a moment and see if I can't recover this and see if I can't get that voice. So I actually paired with the chief operating officer and I said, can I take you to coffee and explain what I should have tried to explain to the CEO first? And so I brought the COO on board, and together the COO and myself, the CFO, we went to the CEO and said, I think this needs another look. And that was how it was recovered. But yeah, now I could have been under another roof with the CEO and presented the idea, and that other CEO would have gone, great, run with it, take over it, figure it out. But that's under a different roof. That's not what happened here. So I think it's really important when you walk into those rooms, especially when you're new, is to be able to review and read the room. I talk a little bit about the velvet magnet effect and the Starmaker effect in my book as well. If you can figure out, my Starmaker was the COO, that they already had street cred. They already had cred with the CEO. I did not. So I used that Starmaker ability to influence the CEO to change his mind. And I think that's really important, is understanding who has influence in the room, who has the ability to change people's minds, and partnering with them in order to get that mindset shifted.
You mentioned the Starmaker, which wasn't a chain of command, right? It wasn't a chain of command, but sometimes they're not.
Sometimes they're not.
The Starmaker and the velvet magnet, if you can describe the velvet magnet, they're not in the chain of command.
Absolutely
and yet
not.
They hold invisible power. So how do we know? Like, we're new to this organization. We just walked in. We're bright and shiny. How do we know who is holding invisible power?
Right. Sometimes if you have to really watch in a meeting, a leader will call on their velvet magnet a lot. So they'll say, hey, Brittany, what do you think of that? Right. And Brittany will say, well, I think it's a good idea, but I have some concerns. Okay, what are those concerns? Right? You'll see people nodding. Yes, Brittany, getting that. You'll have a speaker talking up, or they could be completely silent, sitting in the very back. And if they're shaking their head, everybody's looking at them like, what's Dave going to say? What does Dave think about this? What does, where is that going to be? And if that leader is not aware of that velvet magnet, who basically controls the flow of information, if Dave is not going to agree with that leader, they're not going to get buy-in. And if they don't get buy-in, they get people that are dragging their heels to implement that idea. And as a project manager, I also have a project management background. I often had to find that velvet magnet to partner with them to influence the flow of people to get it done. So I had to find that velvet magnet every single project that I worked on, find out what they agreed with, and more importantly, what they disagreed with, find a solution, turn that idea around so that they could then be my partner in crime on getting this project done on time, on budget, and within scope. Because if that velvet magnet wanted like 4 other things to be added to that project, otherwise it was not going to happen, I could explain that we needed to do it in phases, this project in phases, and those elements would come in maybe phase 2 or phase 3. Would he accept that? And if I could get that buy-in, knowing that those elements, yes, would come in time, then phase 1 would kick off and be successful. Otherwise, phase 1 would have never gotten done. And that's why a lot of projects, I think, struggle, is because we're not engaging our velvet magnets and partnering with them, that those are the influencers that informally influence everyone around us. So that's really important. And then the star makers are those people that champion us. They're our mentors. And I would say for your audience, if you do not have a mentor, go find one, because they are so critically important. They can see the forest around you while you're standing in the trees. So help that mentor give you that feedback to pull you out of that tree so you can see the beautiful forest around you.
So we've talked about making changes within an organization. We've talked about moving up in an organization. We talked about who to partner with to help us, move in the way that we want to be moved in an organization. What happens when there are principles, or there are not even policies, but principles or ways of being within the organization that don't align with who we are? So for an example, everybody goes out for happy hour on Fridays after work. And you don't go out for happy hour because you're picking your kids up, or for whatever reason, you're not going out for happy hour. But there's a lot that happens during happy hour, a lot of talking, a lot of stuff that's going on during happy hour, but you're just not that person. So, and how do you maneuver when situations within the organization just don't seem to work for you?
Well, I think that's a very important thing. I, as a leader in an organization, always knew that I either had a seed or root organizations, especially when you're in a seed organization, or those entry levels that get blown to the rest of the organization. And a root organization is where you're going to establish your roots. You are going to embed yourself into that organization as a specialist, more than a generalist, but you are a specialist, and you want to really thrive in that role. But you have commitments outside of that. One of the things that somebody can do, especially when you have to pick up kids, or you have to, you have this other dynamic and you feel that pressure, it's very important to have that conversation and coming up with a solution saying, hey, can we do this at lunch? Can we get together, maybe not drink, but do something that's team building? Because basically going out for drinks is team building. Let's name it for what it is. Can we do team building in a different way? Can we do it this way, or can we do it that way? Or, could we have a breakfast meeting? I drop my kid off at 6 o'clock. Can we do something at 7 or 8, or bring awareness to the situation without complaint, right? We always well, they always go out and whatever, and I'm sure they're gossiping about me and whatever because I'm not there. No, that's just not what it is. It's team building. And so if you can come up with a way over lunch to build team, like for example, one of the things is that I knew very well that my staff couldn't meet after work. So I had lunch meetings, especially with my management trainees, and I would always bring to them a challenge. Like, tell me if you were a magnet, what would your magnet say on your refrigerator? Because my goal of that management trainees is I had every single discipline at the table, and I wanted them all to learn how to network within their network and build it, right? Build that synergy across departments, across segments. And then I would also bring in a senior vice president to talk to them a couple times a week. So work with your management, work with your team, and figure out how you can do this. Brown bag lunches, training sessions, they don't even have to be formal. It's just like, can we all meet? I went out with my staff members. This was the funniest thing in Philadelphia. For $25, you could go get a mani-pedi and lunch over lunch with I would take, go out with my supervisors and my managers at lunch and get a mani-pedi. Guess what? We were team building in the car on the way there, on the way back, chit-chatting. It wasn't alcohol. It wasn't, partying. So there's so many ways that you can introduce this without feeling like an outsider because you have a child. That child's so precious to you and needs that nurturing time, but you can do this in another way. So be bold, be brave, go and talk to your boss and say, hey, can we do this maybe once a month?
I like what you said about shining a light on something. So you see what's going on and you speak to people, maybe you're speaking to the leader, or maybe you're speaking to the velvet magnet, or, the change makers, and you're getting them on board as well to help you be part of the team building as well without feeling like you're left out.
That's one of the things that I think frustrate managers more than anything. And it frustrated me. So I'm going to bring it up if you don't mind. You, and I mean not you, I'm talking the collective. Maybe I should say we are responsible for our own careers. We are responsible for building the environment that we need to thrive and get to our goals. If we are not building the skills, finding the solutions, addressing what we see as a barrier to advancing our careers, and thinking about it and figuring it out, if we don't do that, and we sit back and say, it's just me, my boss hates me, I don't know what's going on. You know what? Have a conversation with your boss. I've told people several times, go have a conversation. And guess what? Their boss doesn't hate them. They're worrying about their own careers. They'll tell you, hey, I need this and this and this from you. I don't hate you. I think you're brilliant. And I think you don't need me to tell you that you're brilliant because you're doing a great job. So just because I'm not there for a meeting for you doesn't mean that I hate you or didn't show up. It just means that I'm trying to create an environment for the entire team to be successful. So there's so many times that we perceive, oh, my boss hates me, oh, my colleagues don't want to talk to me. They're in their own zone. Unless you bring awareness of, hey, can I have a coffee with you and talk this project through? It's not going to happen unless you make it happen. And so I would like to remind everyone how beautifully extraordinary you are, and how beautifully talented you are, and how much you can solution your own challenges. Maybe you won't get the output that you expect, and maybe that roof isn't for you. Maybe you have to change roofs, but you do have the power to influence it and to make things better for yourself. So do it. Go ahead and figure out a way to connect with the people and make awareness. Because like I would tell you, Roof Rules was not meant for management, but I've had more managers contact me saying, wow, I did not see how I was affecting my staff. How can I do better?
So you talk in the book about knowing yourself, how important it is to know yourself.
Absolutely.
You've got your roof, you've got your roof rules, but what holds up the roof? What do you make a point of? And you've spent quite a while in the book telling us about the four pillars. So what are the four pillars that help us to hold up our own roofs?
Well, I believe everyone's unique and everybody's extraordinary. So I can't tell you what those four pillars are for you, for other people. What I can tell you is think of them as your foundation. Like, do you believe, go back to your childhood and find out what you would like bull up your fist for and fight for when you were a kid, and find out what essays you wrote when you were in college that you were like, I'm gonna make a point here. So what value was that? Was that compassion? Was that honesty? Was that integrity? What are those things that hold up your roof that don't move? They're never going to change. They're who you are. They're a foundation of who you are. So when you walk in that organization and they're making you bend that foundation, you're under the wrong roof, right? It also helps, once you know those foundations, it helps you set your boundaries, right? So like, I've had bosses, being the only woman, I was like, don't cross that line with me. I will do this. I will do this. I will do this. Don't cross this line.
Yeah.
And I got respect. And for that, I got promoted, right? So sometimes we're afraid. We're so afraid, especially women are afraid. If we say no, or if we say, this is my boundary or whatever, I'm never going to get promoted. Well, the thing about it is you don't need to say no. I didn't say no. I just said, this is my boundary. Don't step over it. If you want me to do the job that I'm doing for you, I will be loyal, because loyal is one of my foundations, right? So I am loyal to the T. I will work for you. I will show up. I will get the job done. I will be that solution person for you. But don't ever step across this line again. So I think it's really important, because there are so many scenarios that you can get thrown into, and you can get thrown into a scenario so quickly that your head will spin. But if you don't know your boundaries and you don't know your four pillars that you stand up for, you're not going to be able to say in that situation, that's a boundary I'm not going to step over. Mm-hmm. And there I will say, which is not in my book, I was asked to do something illegal early on in my career. And I was told, you need this job. You need me. You need whatever this is. And I was a new accountant. And guess what? Because integrity is also very important to me. Raised by my great grandmother, that was what it was. My boss came in about an hour later, says, to ask if I had made that incorrect accounting entry. And I was packing my office, and he goes, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "You gave me a choice. I made a choice, and it wasn't yours." I walked out. So again, I knew very young, to your point, I knew very young what my pillars were because my great grandmother helped me find them. And I knew what I was not going to do. I was not going to start my career by making an illegal entry. Now, was it hard? I had food. I was on my own. I had an apartment and a car, and I needed to find rent money, and it was scary. Don't think that it wasn't hard. It was brutal. Now, where do I get rent money? Where do I put food on the table? How am I gonna see this through? Thankfully, I was in an age where I was an accountant, and I was hired 2 weeks later because I had a great reputation in the industry, and I was hired within 2 weeks. So I wasn't out for food for long. But I think it's really important for women to know where their boundaries are and what they will do and what they won't do, and how willing they are to solution that. They need to have a voice. And I think so many times when we're trying to get that promotion, we bend so far and compromise when we don't need to. We just need to find a way to have a voice, to find and elevate the needs so that we can thrive in that environment and deliver what that roof needs. Because that roof is all built around what it needs, right? So every company has a set of needs that it needs to fulfill. And if we are aligned with that roof, if we are fulfilling that need, but still it's out of alignment with one of our values, we can still thrive within that environment as long as we're not bent in half.
Right. Yeah. You talk in the book about something to do with if do you want to be right, or do you want to be effective?
Right. So again, it's like, do you want to be right, or do you want to achieve your goals? Right. So there are times and moments where we can make a decision at the moment to be right and never get to our goal. Right. So the question that I have for so many people is, yes, you were right. How did that work out for you? So by understanding what our goal is, we can make decisions. Do I want to be right in the moment, or do I want to be successful over a given period of time? So again, let's go back to my high school. Did I want to go to those dances? Did I want to go to prom? Did I want to go to those parties? Did I want to be popular? Of course I did. What kid doesn't? But at the end of the day, I knew that at 18, I was going to be on my own, making my way in the world, and I needed good grades. I needed a scholarship. I needed certain things in order to make that happen when I turned 18. And so I was focused on grades. I was focused on an athletic scholarship. I was focused on what I needed to do in order to facilitate a long-term goal. And so I guess that we need to make those choices, and we need to be responsible and accountable for those choices. And we need to be responsible for the emotional impact that we have. So I could have been very upset about not being able to go to the dances, but I made a choice. I made a choice to be that elite athlete so that I could then get the scholarship, get the education, get on with my life.
So in terms of the 4 pillars, so let's say my pillars are family and service. family and service, loyalty, and integrity. And integrity encompasses a lot of stuff. Integrity encompasses not just loyalty, but honesty and compassion. And there's a lot of things within integrity. So if those are my 4 pillars, so I've got them. But I've also got a goal. My goal is, working my way up the ladder. I can see my goal. I've got my vision board. I do all that stuff. But when do we know, okay, I can maybe push the rule a little bit or push the pillar a little bit, but like, how do you know this is something that I can't do, even though my goal is right there? How do you know?
Well, I think your body will tell you, right? Are you tired? Are you sad? If your goal is family, are you showing up to your family in a way that is nurturing? Are you so tired that you can't even take care of your family, right? So pillars are a table. Think of them as legs on a table. And when you push on that table, it needs to be rock solid. Otherwise, if it tips, things in your life don't work, right? They're just not working. How many times we've come home and we've just put our hands in our head and said, oh, I can't do this anymore, right? Well, it's because something's off on one of your pillars, right? And you need to figure out, I'm loyal to this company, but I can't take care of my family, right? I'm struggling there. I want to give service because I'm a service-oriented person and I want to service my family and service this company, but I can't do both right now, right? And I think it's important to say right now. We don't say right now, we say I can't. What I think we need to say is I can't do it right now. Because there's a time when your family's going to grow up and they're going to go off and they may not need you as much anymore later. So what is it that you're going to do to rebalance your table? Are you going to maybe take a demotion? I know that's scary because we're raised to head up that ladder. But what if that's not the right thing? What if a demotion is better for you? You can come in, you can do your work, you can go back home, you can leave everything at home, or maybe not taking that promotion right now. Oh my God, that promotion's never going to come around again. Well, guess what? If you do your job, that promotion, yes, may not be there at that company, but guess what? It's at the competitor across the street and they'll be glad to hire you if you're good at your job. So I think that when you're balancing your tables, right? When you're looking at your 4 pillars and saying, what isn't working and what do I need to do? Do I do maybe, if not paying bills? I mean, I've had friends that worked 3 jobs. I've had friends that went to school and did and juggled and made it work. So I think for each individual, you need to look and solution where your foundation that's holding up your roof is out of balance. Think of it as if you have a wall that's crumbling over there, your safety and security in life is not safe and secure. And in order to thrive and do your best work, you need to feel safe and secure. And if you don't, fix your pillars, fix the solution, find another roof, adjust the roof, do something, because doing nothing is still a choice.
That's well said. Yes. So we are almost at the end of the show. And so you run a company called Belvitri.
Yes. So Belvitri is inspired by Latin. I believe known as ordinary, that we're all extraordinary. and that we have deep roots, and that no matter what we do in life, it's all connected, right? So whether I'm an accountant, whether I'm an IT specialist, whether I'm a leader, whether I'm a follower, whether I'm writing, because I write under multiple pen names, so I've written under multiple genres. And people are like, how can you do that? I'm like, it's all aligned because I believe in everyday heroes. So Belvitri is all about beautiful tree, and that those branches of the tree, even though they're different and they're all gnarly and windy and whatever, they're all part of me because they all lead down to my core trunk, and they're deeply rooted with my great-grandmother, because my great-grandmother really rooted me in life. And so for me, Belvitri, which means beautiful tree in Latin, is my voice, if you will.
And your service to others.
Yeah.
So it's beautiful that your grandma continues to live that way. So how can we get a hold of you, Anne?
Well, you can go to belvitri.com, Belvitri. It sort of shows you my 3 different brand names. I have nothing to hide anymore. When I was working for a banking company, I was told you can't write fiction, otherwise we're in trouble. So for years, I sort of separated my business and my writing. Now I don't need to worry about that anymore. So you can see my 3 different genres: nonfiction, epic fantasy, and romance. I write senior romance. So I write for people that are a little bit older finding love. But you also can find me under Liz Kelley and Z Kelley, and you can find me on Amazon. Just go look, type in Roof Rules, read away. I really hate is when people sell a book and then they sell the workbook separately. That drives me crazy. So the book and the workbook are together. Again, this is trying to be my gift for the world. I hope it is. I hope that I stop hearing I'm broken or I can't or there's nothing I can do about that. That just breaks my heart, because I do feel that we can all be empowered and that we do have a voice, and that voice must be heard. I think it's so important today that every voice be heard. And so that's, again, why I wrote the book, is so that we can start seeing these invisible structures and understanding why things are not working out the way that they're working. And maybe we have some false beliefs that we need to address, like, I'm not worthy, or I am not supposed to be heard, or I have to control and be perfect. I have to be perfect in everything that I do. And that's exhausting, being perfect. I tried for a long time to be perfect. It doesn't work.
And
so I think that's really important.
You got diagnosed as an adult with learning challenges.
Yes. So keep this in mind. My great-grandmother would be very proud of me that she knew that there was something wrong with my brain because she was a teacher. And she knew when I could look something up in a dictionary, but less than 10 seconds later, I couldn't write that word down. So she didn't know what it was. She didn't know dyslexia back then. I'm a high functioning dyslexic. And I also am a high functioning ADHD person that I've learned to mask. And the reason I mask that is because my great-grandmother said, the world doesn't care. You must not make any excuses. And so I didn't, and I haven't. So there is no reason why I can't write a book in today's world, because we have the tools to do it. Grammarly is great at fixing my grammar when I can't get a sentence working correctly. And so I also have voice to text, so I can do voice to text, and I don't have to type it. and type words backwards and upside down and inside out, right? You just speak it and it goes right down on the page. And so that's where I'm saying is, if you have a challenge in your life, get inventive, get creative, be that extraordinary you that you are, and find a way to make it happen, because bad things happen to good people, but that doesn't need to be our anchor. We don't need to be pulled down and underwater because that bad thing happened. And so, yeah, find hope, find that thread of hope, and just hold on to it for dear life and climb up and to that sunshine and brightness that you deserve.
Beautiful. So, do you have any last words of hope for our guests?
In this negative world, we have a choice. We can be negative, or we can reach for hope. And it's a choice. And I hope for everyone that we reach for hope, because recently I've been traveling in areas of the world that shouldn't have any hope. They're drinking muddy water. They don't have food on their tables. There's disease. There's crime. There's challenges. And I looked around when I was in an African village at the laughter and the joy and the camaraderie and the community spirit that they had. And it was a lesson for me. It was a lesson for me it was an eye-opener to say, hope is a state of mind. And I hope that we can all embrace what I embraced in that African village of people that had no reason to embrace hope. And every single person did. So that's what I'm leaving us with today. I hope it's a message of inspiration, and yeah, I just hope that we get there, because boy, the noise that's all around us is pretty negative these days.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And when we look outside of that noise, when we just put that noise on the shelf and look outside, like you said, the world is still a beautiful place. Just climb that rope and go up to where the hope lives, right?
Yes. Yes. Get to the sunshine. Get to the sunshine. Get above the storm cloud, and you will see that bright, brilliant light that is called hope. And it will change. It changed me. Standing in that village changed me.
Yeah.
And yeah, I hope that comfort and that change and that eye-openness comes to every single one of your listeners, because they make a difference. We make a difference.
We do. And Roof Rules is a book of hope, because there's so many ways that we can get around. We can maneuver. We can build ourselves up. We can build the organization that we're working within up without having to change who we are to do it. And like you said, if things can't change, there's the organization across the street.
And not only that, but I hope that people can see in the book too, that when they create their own roof, they can create rules where everyone underneath it can thrive. And I think that's important too, is that's what's coming out from the leaders that have read it, saying, I'm going to do better. I'm going to do better. I need to do better. So that's really, that, I don't know, that really touches my heart when I hear that. So
yeah. Well, thank you so much, Anne, for coming on Hopenning today. I appreciate you. I appreciate the book. I appreciate the fact that you've got another book coming out soon, right? In 2027.
I actually have two more books. Yeah, I have two more books. So one of the books that I'm also finding is that I'm collaborating with one of my colleagues from a really long time ago. Wrote her up. I said, I'm seeing too many people struggle in the interview process. I've been mentoring quite a few young people that are not aware of some of the invisible structures in the interview process. So I'm collaborating with a friend, and we're doing the Interview Advantage. It's going to come out this year, hopefully. And we're going to get that book out and in the hands of people that are struggling to find a job or change careers, or, make sure that they get that job that they really want. That's Interview Advantage. And then I'm going to come out next year, hopefully early in the year, with the sister book to Roof Rules. Roof Rules is about top to bottom. We talk about the alignment, how you find that. And I'm writing Aligned, which is finding your structure from the bottom up, so that one comes from the top down and the other one comes from the bottom up. So there's sort of a sister book together. So when I talk about those pillars, some people really struggle with finding their pillars. And so I want to make it easier for people to really hone in on what is important to them, because we always reach for what people want us to reach for, which is hope and, integrity and honesty and those types of things. But when we really peel back that onion layer by layer by layer, we really hone in on what those true values are. And that once we get there, man, do those not change. And then we see the threads throughout our lives that wove everything that we'd done from childhood. And so you can see the fabric of your life that just now brings in that passion and that alignment, and that success. Because once you are aligned, that success comes because the noise goes away, right? And so that's what I'm trying to hope, is to build that alignment for people.
Oh, it's going to be a great book. I hope you come back on the show once it's published. That would be great to
you're
have.
Great. And thank you again for sharing this important message. If not for people like you putting this out there, we need this. We need hope. We need inspiration. We need empowerment. We need to understand that we are not broken, that we're extraordinary, and each one of us counts. And that's what I'm trying to say, is you are important. And yeah.
Well, thank you, Ann. And thank you to everyone that tuned in today, whether it's your first time or whether you've been here many, many times. We appreciate you. If you haven't yet subscribed, please do. The button is right down there. It will help me to get hope out. Yes. And it'll help Ann to get hope out, that there is hope. It doesn't matter where you are, whether you're still working, whether you're going to be joining the workforce, or whether you're retired. There's Roof Rules no matter where you will go. And to be able to navigate the Roof Rules and thrive within it and be in alignment with them and who you are at your core is what is most important. So thank you, Ann, and thank you to everyone. God bless. Bye-bye.
This podcast and Inspired Healing Hypnotherapy do not provide medical advice. The information included here is not limited to text, graphics, images, or other material contained, and are for informational purposes only. No material in this podcast is intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or treatment, and before undertaking a new healthcare regimen. And never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard on this site.